Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to my blog, the Motion Graphics blog. My name is Alan Shisco, and I am a motion graphics artist. My website is www.effector.ca, and if you haven't been there in a little while, drop on by and check out my the reel that I've got up there. It's new, it's got a lot of new work on it, and I'm pretty proud of it. I think it's pretty exciting. Today, however, we are going to look at a project that I was working on. The purpose of this particular video is not to give you a step-by-step tutorial on how to do this kind of thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the project, and I'm going to explain the things that I did to get to where I got, and the hows and the whys. It's meant to give you basically an overview of how these techniques work that I sometimes use. And it's not meant to be a really critical, close examination on how you pull these things off. So I assume that you know a little bit about After Effects and Photoshop. So let's get to it here. The project that I'm going to look at today is a corporate piece that I worked on. And this was a really challenging project because what they did is they came to me and they said, okay, we got this building that our people are going to be moving into. We want to get a video so that we can show to people, and it'll be a really nice looking video, and it's going to really get them excited about moving to this new facility. I said, okay, that sounds great. What do you got for me? And they said, all we have are a whole bunch of still photos. And I thought, oh my goodness, well, I could just drop them in a timeline and dissolve between them and put it to some nice music, but that's really visually boring. So what I decided to do, and I pitched my proposal and they thought it sounded great, is that I was going to take all of these photos and I was going to make it look like that we were actually in the building and that we were using a camera to dolly and track through the spaces just to give more of a sense of depth and more of a sense of grandeur to the facility. And they thought that was great. How are you going to do it? All you got are still photos to work from. We don't have the budget to go get a camera and go in and shoot all this stuff. And I said, I'm going to do it all in After Effects. I'm going to do it all in Photoshop. And they said, fine, go to it. So this is how I did it. If you take a look at, this is the final rendered movie, and I'm just going to slowly drag through, and it looks like, if you take a look at the elements there, that I'm not just doing a pan and scan over some pictures. There actually appears to be a little bit of depth in the shot, except for that one. And the way that I did this is I used a technique that uses something called parallax. Now, parallax in its simplest form is you take several objects, you distribute them in Z space, which is the space going backwards and forwards from your point of view. You distribute them in Z space, and you do a little bit of a camera move, and the objects that are closer to you and the objects that are further from you appear to move at different speeds, and therefore you get the illusion of depth. That sounded really quite confusing, I'm sure, so let's get into it and I'll show you how I did it. First off, I went into Photoshop. As I said, the only thing that I had to work with were still photos. This is one of those still photos here. So, first thing that I did is I wanted to clean up the background plate a little bit because I was going to be having a foreground object. Now, if I turn off all the other objects here, let me just move this over here. You can see I've got 4 layers there. I'm going to turn them all off, and there's the background. But this one pillar moved. That's because that pillar is the foreground object that I'm going to use. If I move that, you can see that it exists independently of the rest of the picture now. Now, this brings up a key point to the whole thing. If you're going to be working with this technique, the important thing is that you make sure that your still photos are as clean as you can get them. Because what I had to do to get rid of this foreground object is I had to use clone tool and repair tool and all that kind of stuff to effectively remove it from the scene. Reason being that when we do the camera move in After Effects, as you'll see, if it's not removed from the background layer, then you don't get that feeling of 3D space. So try and get as clean a shot as possible, and you'll be well ahead of the game. So that was my foreground element. What I'm going to do now is turn off the background and take a look at what we have. I'm going to turn on my one midground element, which is this blue wall over on the right, and my second midground element, which is the glass wall over on this side right here. Now when I turn on my background layer, it's essentially the same photo, except I've cut it up into a bunch of different layers. There's a foreground, FG, there's midground, in this case there's 2 midgrounds, mid 2 and mid 1, and there's a background, which is BG. So You get everything all sliced and diced like this, and you take it into After Effects. So here we are in After Effects, and I brought in those Photoshop files that I was working on as a composition, and we're looking at that one composition here right now. So I'm just going to quickly do a little drag through here so you can sort of see what happens. We'll start off here, and if I do a little drag, you can see that we appear to be getting some 3D movement going on. Now it's really subtle, and that's the whole point of this technique, is it's supposed to be pretty subtle. It's just supposed to give you an idea of 3D space. Now if you take a look at it, you can see that we've got our foreground object, we've got our midground objects, and we have our background. Now because the background is further away in the camera, as the camera does a little dolly forward, everything appears to move in 3D space, right? So let's take a look actually so you can get a really good idea on how this works. I'm just going to step back a little bit and actually look at my scene, including the camera. I'm going to go to my camera tool here, and if I pull back, there's the camera right there. We're going to keep on going, and you can see as I do a little bit of an orbit around here where everything is distributed in 3D space. So there's my foreground object, which is my pillar. There are my midground objects, and they're obviously in the middle, and there's my background. Now if I select the camera here and pull out a little bit more so we can see the movement, and if I do a drag, you can see the camera movement that I've got there. Right? It just starts up fairly close and then pulls back. And because everything is a different further or closer to the camera here, then that's how you get the illusion of depth. Now, the other thing that I chose is that a lot of the photos that I had didn't have foreground, midground, and background objects. So I was a little bit stymied for a little while, because for you to really sell the idea of depth here, you sort of want to have at least those three things. So what I decided to do was I decided to create my own foreground, midground, and background objects that I can put in, and that is these people here. So if I go to zoom in a little bit, there's one of my people, and there's another one of my people here. And I did exactly the same thing as I did with the other layers. I just distributed them in 3D space so that as we do the moves, you still get the idea of depth going on. And they sort of act as visual cue points that really sell the look a little bit more. So let's go to another image that I was working on so you can see how it looks. I'm going to do a quick little pan here. Again, we're looking at this in the 3D view, and you can see that we've got the foreground here and the background here and no midground. This was one of those shots where I didn't really have a midground that I could use. I did have all these tables down here. If we zoom in a little bit more and a little bit more, and I'm just going to move over a little bit. But the trouble is, imagine cutting those out in Photoshop, all those spindly little legs and everything. It would have taken forever. So what I decided to do to sell this particular one a little bit was use one of my familiar people here, and I wanted to put this person in the middle of all of these desks and chairs and tables and the likes. Now the way that I did that, because this background is just one single flat layer, is to get him in the middle of all that, I created, let me just zoom in a little bit more here. I cut out one of these chair sets, and what I did is I positioned that chair set in front of this person here and used it as a mat. So let me turn it on and you'll see what I mean. There's the chair set that I painted in Photoshop. Now when I use that and apply that mat as an alpha inverted mat to the fellow, that's where you get the idea that in fact he is behind this chair and therefore in the middle of our flat scene. So there's one more little trick that you can do to get a sense of depth to the image. So did this, I don't know for how many pictures, something like 50 or 60 or something like that, and it took a really long time. And then once I got these camera moves for every one of those shots, all I had to do was take them and line them up in one great big comp, which in my case is named suitably Honkin' Comp. This is my number 5 version. I'm just going to maximize this comp so you can see what I got. And every one of these layers is its own pre-comp with something like what I was just working on. Different foreground, background, and midground elements distributed in 3D space with a camera movement. Down here we've got a little bit of music track that I edited to. I used my star key as I was playing back the music so that I could put in the beats where I wanted to cut to. And I know that this looks pretty intimidating. There's a whole lot of layers here. What was the total? Was it 52? It was more than that. Um, but now that you know how it works, then you know that actually this was actually pretty simple technique, just repeated over and over and over and over again. So that's the idea for this particular project. It's taking stills, making them so that they look 3D, and giving a lot more visual interest to some shots to make it look like they're not flat photos, that in fact you were going through 3D space. Hope that helped with people. Do give it a shot. Take your camera out, do a couple of stills. Just make sure that you've got foreground objects, midground objects, background objects. Cut them up in Photoshop, bring them into After Effects, distribute in Z Space, do a camera move, and you're all set. So my name again is Alan Shishko. My website is effector.ca. Hope everybody enjoyed this little blog entry, and have a good day.